situation.
Sitch, you always try to make it. Fear is irrational.
I know, but I'm so sorry.
You can't come out here and say, "Oh, it's totally irrational to have this irrational fear." Yes, that's the point.
I'm so sorry that government policy should be based on logic and not irrational fears. When someone on the other side is trying to give you some slack to work with and you punch them in the face and you spit on them in the face, then don't be surprised when everyone on the other side becomes a partisan hack that never works with you or addresses with you. Right. And Matt Gaetz is basically contributing to this environment, and people don't care because he got an easy dunk and that's all they really care about.
Ms. Scanlon, we just heard my Democrat colleague, Mr. Cohen, say that your circumstance could have been fully resolved if we'd have just had some barriers up in the women's showers. Do you think that that's a sufficient way to resolve what we're dealing with here?
You are so right. He really looks like Jack Nicholson as the Joker in the original Batman. That's so weird. I never thought Matt Gaetz looked like Jack Nicholson in my entire life till today. What's happening? Why does he look different? What's happening with his face?
That's the look he's going for. He's going for the young
used to
Jack.
Look like this.
He's going for the young Jack Nicholson.
I think by Representative Cohen admitting that we need barriers acknowledges there are biological differences between men and women. And by acknowledging that we need to have private spaces that are separate from each other, why can't we just use the locker rooms that we've always used, the men's and the women's? If you're acknowledging that we need protection and privacy from these men, then you're acknowledging that the locker rooms we've always used are the correct ones.
So I actually hate this.
No,
I hate that answer.
Look, this is so based.
Well, no, it's actually
don't ruin it, Sitch. Don't ruin it. It's so fragile here.
No, I'm sorry. It's actually terrible. I'll tell you why. So you have the other guy who is at least willing to make a concession, where he's like, okay, I understand that if women, have some consideration and concern, or they don't want this, that something should be done to address that. Try to adjudicate both sides of the issue, as opposed to just telling one side to basically fuck off, right? Which is what you essentially want from our elected representatives. And this is actually the reason why. And I've said this a lot. People don't like to accept this, but it's very true. Whenever you look at a system like a teacher acting in a school, or an FBI agent, or your elected representative, and you see them engaging in some bad behavior, there's a specific reason they're engaging in that bad behavior. And usually it's because the system, the institution, the way the system is set up, incentivizes that bad behavior, right?
Sure.
And so this is a prime example of that, because you have someone who essentially is trying to do something that is the right thing, which is to say, okay, let's try to address the concern here and acknowledge it. Like, he didn't have to address the legitimacy of their concern. From a political standpoint, he doesn't gain anything from doing that. He actually loses it. It's always, from a political standpoint, it's always better to just take a hardline position on your team, right?
Right.
And so this guy, he deviates away from that to say, well, let me try to give you some consideration from a moral level, because I agree with you that maybe it doesn't make sense to do this way.
And they slap his hand.
And they slap him in the face for it, and he's penalized for it, right? He's completely penalized for it by Matt Gaetz. He's completely penalized for it because Matt Gaetz just doesn't give a shit about that. He's like, yes, an opportunity to attack this guy and to attack the left. And then the girl who responds, she strawmans the fuck out of his position, because he never said why he was in favor of having the dividers. I would assume if you asked him, he'd say something about just, well, if this bothers them, then that's fine. Privacy, and she turns it into this safety issue. Like, she's afraid that she's going to be sexually assaulted in the locker room by Leah Thompson or something.
Well, that's what the fear is. So,
well, I don't think that's, if that was the argument, that's a terrible argument. I think the better argument is one of just, you don't want to necessarily be in the space and have to look at someone with male genitalia changing, which I find a little bit more understandable, in terms of, obviously if there's a bunch of girls in a locker room, you don't think one person is going to, try to sexually assault one person in the middle of the locker room with all the other people sitting around, right? So I don't think that's a good argument to kind of hinge it on at least in their specific situation.
Sitch, you always try to make it. Fear is irrational.
I know, but I'm so sorry.
You can't come out here and say, "Oh, it's totally irrational to have this irrational fear." Yes, that's the point.
I'm so sorry that government policy should be based on logic and not irrational fears, okay? Because from an irrational fear perspective, if someone from the swim team is all alone in the locker room, the fucking male coach can go in and sexually assault them, right? It doesn't make a difference whether Leah Thompson or a trans woman is in there or not in terms of the sexual assault case. It's a bad argument. It's always been a bad argument, okay? The better argument, if that's what you want to focus on, is just that, well, yeah, women shouldn't have to necessarily see male genitalia if they don't want to, which I think is a fine, legitimate argument, okay?
Isn't insurance designed to deal with the fear of like your house getting burned down? Even though it's such a small, minute chance that your house might actually get burned down?
Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with this.
Well, I'm just saying, we do things all the time to deal with our insecurities and our fear, even though the chances of those things happening are very tiny.
Okay.
So she's like, I don't want this dude in the locker room. It makes me afraid.
It doesn't.
I
really
want the fear
issue,
gone.
Though. Yeah, but you're talking about When
Look, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this.
I know, but
I already defeated you. So let's.
You didn't already defeat me because we're talking about a situation where we have the two people and their rights conflict. I think when you're trying to adjudicate whose rights is going to supersede someone else's rights, your argument has to be based on something that's fucking logical. I know it's like a wild position, but
biological males don't have rights to female-only spaces, so they're sex-segregated spaces.
Okay, you're diverting away from the actual argument, but
anyway, I just want to back up a little bit here.
Okay.
Well, no, you said...
I just, again, it's, when someone on the other side is trying to give you some slack to work with and you punch them in the face and you spit on them in the face, then don't be surprised when everyone on the other side becomes a partisan hack that never works with you or addresses with you. Right. And Matt Gaetz is basically contributing to this environment, and people don't care because he got an easy dunk and that's all they really care about. So...
Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.